We are living in an era of digital amnesia. Every single day, people walk through life entirely disconnected from the physical artifacts that built the modern world. We swipe plastic cards, we tap our glass screens, and we treat physical cash as if it were a dirty, obsolete burden. When the average person finds an old, darkened coin in the bottom of a drawer, their human instinct betrays them in one of two ways. They either throw it back into the dark, assuming it is worthless trash, or they let their imagination run wild, assuming that because the coin has survived for 80 years, it must magically be worth a fortune. Both of these assumptions are catastrophically wrong. Welcome to Rare Coin Reveal. You have just stepped into the ultimate forensic vault. Today, we are beginning a massive two-part documentary series. We are not going to look at money like amateurs. We are going to analyze the chemistry, the brutal industrial history, and the microscopic anomalies of the United States wheat penny. We are going back to the defining decade of the 20th century, a time of global panic, wartime rationing, and mechanical desperation. Turn off your distractions. Get your highest magnification jeweler's loupe ready, because in this first part, I am going to teach you how to read the scars of a world at war. I am going to show you why a seemingly worthless piece of copper can transform into a high-end auction trophy, but only if it managed to survive a metallurgical miracle. The 1951 D wheat penny, Denver Mint. The year is 1951. The United States had barely caught its breath from the Second World War before finding itself plunged into the tense, grinding reality of the Korean War and the terrifying dawn of the atomic age. Yet, despite the global anxiety, the domestic American economy was experiencing an absolute, unprecedented explosion of consumerism. The suburbs were expanding. Diners, drive-in theaters, and massive department stores were springing up across the landscape. To fuel this roaring engine of domestic capitalism, the government needed a tidal wave of physical currency. And nestled in the high altitudes of Colorado, the Denver Mint was ordered to open the floodgates. Take your 1951 wheat penny out of its jar and hold it directly under a harsh white light. Look precisely beneath the numbers of the date. If you see a sharp, distinct letter D stamped into the copper, you are holding a piece of that post-war industrial frenzy. That D means your coin was born in Denver. Now, flip the coin over and run your eyes across the two iconic wheat stalks. This design, symbolizing the agricultural backbone of the nation, had been circulating since 1909. It is a beautiful, heavy, 95% solid copper artifact. But because it is so beautiful, and because it is over 70 years old, the average person makes a massive, heartbreaking financial miscalculation. They assume that because the coin looks like a relic from another lifetime, it must carry the price tag of a rare museum exhibit. Here at Rare Coin Reveal, we deal in raw, unfiltered, numismatic reality. The Denver Mint in 1951 was not operating as a boutique mint for collectors. It was an industrial powerhouse operating at a blistering, machine-tearing speed. That year, Denver struck an astonishing 774 million of these pennies. Nearly 1 billion of these copper discs were violently punched out, shoved into canvas bags, and shipped on freight trains to banks across the western and central United States. Because of this astronomical mintage, the market is completely and utterly saturated with them. If your 1951 D wheat penny is a dull, muddy brown color, If the portrait of Abraham Lincoln is covered in tiny nicks and the high points of his cheekbone are worn flat from sliding across countertops for 7 decades, its financial value is agonizingly low. A common, circulated 1951 to D, will generally sell for somewhere between 15 cents and $1.50. It is a fascinating historical placeholder. But the brutal law of supply and demand dictates that it is nothing more than common pocket change. So, how does a coin with a mintage of over 700 million suddenly become a highly coveted prize? Why do elite collectors and Wall Street investors fiercely bid against each other for a 1951D? The secret lies in the microscopic violence of the minting process itself and the almost impossible quest for the original red tone. When the Denver Mint was churning out these coins at breakneck speeds, the freshly struck pennies were immediately ejected from the hydraulic press and dropped into massive, deep iron hoppers. Thousands of heavy copper coins would crash into each other. The sharp, reeded edges of other coins would violently strike the flat surfaces of the new pennies, leaving deep gouges, dents, and scratches known in the forensic grading industry as bag marks. 99% of all 1951D pennies were physically damaged before they even left the factory building. To extract serious wealth from this specific year, you are hunting for a statistical ghost. You are searching for a coin that achieved a perfect condition or high mint state grade. This means the coin miraculously fell into the hopper, traveled through the banking system, and was pulled out of circulation without suffering a single visible bag mark on Lincoln's face or the wheat stalks. But physical perfection is only half the battle. The ultimate multiplier of wealth for the 1951D is the color. Copper is a highly reactive metal. Over decades, exposure to oxygen and humidity naturally turns it into a dark, flat brown. Elite collectors demand the aesthetic perfection of a coin that looks exactly like it did the second it was struck. They are looking for the red designation. If you manage to open an original, forgotten paper bankroll from 1951 and you extract a 1951D that has been perfectly shielded from the atmosphere, a coin that blinds you with a fiery, original, metallic red shine, uncorrupted by dark carbon spots or the devastating chemical burn of a human fingerprint. You have discovered a premier numismatic treasure in flawless, untouched grades like MS-66 or MS-67 red. The humble $1 value vanishes. The coin enters a new stratosphere, commanding heavy premiums because completionists absolutely require that pristine, blazing red aesthetic to finalize their high-end display sets. And this brings us to the most critical, wealth-saving warning of this entire forensic analysis. When an amateur collector hears that a red 1951D is valuable, they look at their dark brown penny and they think they can cheat the system. They attempt to artificially restore the red tone. They might skip the harsh kitchen chemicals and instead buy a soft jewelry polishing cloth. Thinking they are being gentle, they rub the cloth over Lincoln's head, trying to buff the brown patina away and reveal the shiny copper underneath. This is a fatal error. The original, natural red tone of a newly minted coin is created by microscopic, crystalline flow lines formed by the immense pressure of the steel die. It is a physical structure, not just a color. When you take a polishing cloth to a brown penny, you are permanently erasing those crystalline flow lines. You are stripping the metal bare. The coin will become shiny, yes, but it will be a harsh, reflective, unnatural shine that forensic experts call whizzed or improperly cleaned. The moment a professional grader at PCGS or NGC puts that polished coin under a halogen lamp, they will instantly see the unnatural light reflection and the thousands of microscopic scratches left by the cloth. The coin will be permanently slabbed with a cleaned label. All collector premium will be instantly vaporized. You cannot manufacture the past. You can only preserve it. If your 1951D is brown, leave it brown. Its dark color is the authentic armor it built to survive the Korean War era. But if you truly find an original, blazing red specimen, do not breathe on it. Do not touch its face. Secure it by its edges. Encapsulate it in a rigid, PVC-free acrylic holder, and know that you are holding a perfect, frozen fragment of a world that no longer exists. The 1942 wheat penny. No mint mark. I want you to completely erase the modern world from your mind. Transport your consciousness back to the terrifying, unpredictable year of 1942. The United States had just suffered the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor. The nation was no longer standing on the sidelines of the global conflict. America was now fully, aggressively, and irreversibly plunged into the nightmare of the Second World War. The entire country went into a state of absolute emergency lockdown. Car factories completely stopped making civilian vehicles and began assembling heavy bomber planes. Citizens were rationing their food, their gasoline, and their rubber. And inside the massive, stone-walled fortress of the Philadelphia Mint, the government was facing a terrifying logistical nightmare of its own. They needed copper. Copper was suddenly the most critical, strategic, and vital survival resource on the planet. The military desperately needed millions of tons of pure copper to manufacture the brass casings for artillery shells, the complex electrical wiring for naval battleships, the tactical communication lines that would stretch across the battlefields of Europe and the Pacific. The government realized that they could no longer afford to waste this precious war metal by stamping it into everyday pocket change. 1942 is a legendary, monumental year in numismatic history because it represents the bitter end of an era. It was the absolute final year that the United States government would use the traditional, classic, heavy, 95% solid copper alloy before entering a state of total panic. The very next year, in 1943, the government would strip the copper away entirely and force the mint to produce the infamous, rust-prone, zinc-coated steel pennies. So, when you hold a 1942 wheat penny in your hand, you are not just holding money, you are holding the final breath of the pre-restriction copper age. Look closely at your coin. Focus your vision on the area directly underneath the numbers of the date. You will see a perfectly smooth, completely blank space. There is no letter there. That absolute absence of a mint mark is the silent, historical signature of the mighty Philadelphia Mint. Flip the coin over and run your thumb across the majestic, curving wheat stalks that frame the words 1 cent. This is a dense, heavy, beautiful piece of metallurgical history. But right here is where we must separate the emotional romance of history from the cold, calculating, and unforgiving reality of the financial market. Because the United States economy was shifting into a massive wartime production overdrive, the citizens needed cash. They needed physical coins to buy war bonds, to pay for streetcar tickets, and to keep the domestic economy from collapsing while the troops were deployed. The Philadelphia Mint was ordered to strike these copper pennies at a suicidal, machine-breaking speed. In the year 1942, Philadelphia produced over 655 million of these exact coins. Let that staggering number sink into your mind. Over 500 million solid copper discs were violently struck by steel dies, thrown into massive canvas bags, loaded onto armored trains, and dumped into the cash registers of a nation at war. Because of this overwhelming, astronomical mintage number, I must give you the brutal truth that other channels refuse to say. If you find a 1942 wheat penny in a dusty old jar in your garage, and that coin is a dark, dull, chocolate brown color, if the portrait of Abraham Lincoln has been smoothed down by decades of sliding across wooden counters, and if the intricate lines on the wheat ears are flattened from being trapped in the pockets of 3 different generations, its financial value is severely crushed by its own abundance. In the real numismatic market, a common, circulated 1942 penny will only fetch between 15 cents and perhaps $2. And that $2 mark is only if the coin still has a decent horse readable appearance and a beginner collector desperately needs to plug a hole in their display folder. It is an incredible piece of World War II history, yes. But financially, it is just common pocket change. So, if there are hundreds of millions of these coins out there, where is the hidden fortune? Why do high-end auction houses, Wall Street investors, and elite numismatic scholars hunt for the 1942 penny with an almost terrifying obsession? The answer is the war against the cosmos, the battle against the chemistry of planet Earth. The elite wealth hidden inside this specific year does not come from the date itself. It comes from the miraculous statistical impossibility of a condition known as brilliant uncirculated, or BU. To understand why a brilliant uncirculated coin is so insanely valuable, you have to understand the biological and chemical tragedy of copper. Copper is one of the most highly reactive, unstable, and sensitive elements on the periodic table. When a blank copper planche is loaded into the hydraulic press at the Philadelphia Mint, the steel die slams down onto it with tons of crushing pressure. That violent impact forces the solid metal to flow outward from the center. This microscopic, outward flow of metal creates millions of invisible, crystalline ridges and valleys on the surface of the coin. When you take a freshly minted coin and hold it under a bright light, the light waves hit those crystalline ridges and bounce back, creating a dazzling and spinning optical illusion known as cartwheel luster. A brand new 1942 penny radiates a fiery, liquid, metallic red color that looks absolutely alive. But the clock of death starts ticking the exact millisecond that coin touches the open air. Our atmosphere is filled with oxygen. It is filled with humidity. And in the industrial cities of the 1940s, the air was thick with sulfur from coal factories. When these elements touch the naked copper, they trigger a violent, irreversible oxidative chemical reaction. That fiery red luster begins to suffocate. It darkens into a brownish red. Then it turns into a flat brown. And finally, it becomes that dark, dead, chocolate color that you see on 99.9% of all surviving wheat pennies. And the air is not the only enemy. The human touch is a weapon of mass destruction for copper. The skin on your fingertips constantly secretes natural oils, moisture, and highly corrosive microacids. If a bank teller in 1942 picked up a brand new penny and pressed their bare thumb flat against the surface, they transferred that acid directly onto the copper. That invisible fingerprint permanently etches itself into the metal, eating away the mint luster like a dark, spreading cancer over the decades. Therefore, the ultimate trophy, the holy grail that keeps forensic graders at agencies like PCGS awake at night, is finding a 1942 Philadelphia penny that managed to stop time completely. We are looking for a coin that was pulled from a fresh bank roll in 1942, placed into a bone-dry but sulfur-free paper envelope, and locked inside a climate-controlled vault for over 80 years. We are looking for a coin that never once touched the sweaty, acidic skin of a human hand. If you have the staggering luck to uncover a 1942 penny that still blinds you with its original red shine, a coin where the cheekbone of Abraham Lincoln has zero impact marks from hitting other coins in the factory hopper, and where the delicate lines of the wheat stalks look like they were carved by a laser, you have just broken the matrix of numismatics. That coin is no longer worth 15 cents. In the elite, flawless grades of Mint State 66 or Mint State 67 red, the value of that common coin violently explodes. It skyrockets into the hundreds, and sometimes thousands of dollars on the open auction market. Wealthy completionists who demand that their historical collections look like untouched museum exhibits will fight bidding wars to own that perfect and frozen capsule of World War II history. But right here is where the tragedy of human greed rears its ugly head. And you need to listen to me right now, as if your entire financial future depends on it. Every single day, an amateur treasure hunter finds a dark brown 1942 penny in their grandfather's old cigar box. They go on the internet and they read that shiny red pennies are worth a fortune. And then their brain makes a catastrophic, irreversible mistake. They think, if I clean off this brown dirt, the coin will be shiny and red again, and I will be rich. They walk into their kitchen. They grab a microfiber cloth. They grab baking soda, or lemon juice, or vinegar. Or worse, they go to the garage and grab a bottle of harsh, chemical brass polish. They apply the acid to the wheat penny, and they begin to rub the metal as hard as they can. In that exact second, they have committed the ultimate forensic crime. Never, ever, under any circumstances, clean a historical coin. What the amateur fails to realize is that the dark brown color is not dirt that can be washed away. That dark patina is the actual physical copper that has bonded with the oxygen in the air. When you rub that coin with an acidic chemical, you are not cleaning it. You are stripping and dissolving the top atomic layer of the coin itself. You are violently tearing away those microscopic flow lines that the hydraulic press created in 1942. And when you rub the surface with a cloth, and the microscopic dust particles act like heavy grit sandpaper, carving millions of deep, parallel scratches into the metal, known in the industry as hairlines. The amateur pulls the coin out of the liquid and smiles. They think they have won because the coin is shiny, but it is a dead, unnatural shine. It looks like pale, raw salmon. It has a slippery, fake, toy-like glare. When that cleaned coin is sent to a professional forensic grader, the expert will spot the fraud in a fraction of a millisecond. They will place the coin under a stereoscopic microscope with raking halogen light. They will see the barren, devastated landscape of the metal. They will see the acid-pitted craters and the brutal, parallel hairlines slicing across Lincoln's face. Instantly, the coin is condemned. It is sealed in a plastic slab with the dreaded purple label of death, cleaned. All of its premium collector value is executed on the spot. No serious investor will ever buy a cleaned coin. You will have taken a genuine, authentic relic of the Second World War, and you will have reduced it back to a worthless piece of damaged scrap copper. If your 1942 penny has a dark, honest, chocolate brown patina, respect its skin. That darkness is its passport. It is the irrefutable proof that the coin naturally survived the 20th century without being artificially altered. And if you do happen to find an authentic, brilliant, uncirculated red specimen, treat it like a biohazard. Hold it strictly by the reeded edges. Never let your skin touch the flat surfaces. Lock it in a rigid, airtight acrylic capsule and protect it from the atmosphere. The year 1942 taught us that the true value of history is not defined by how many objects were made in a factory. It is defined by the miracle of what managed to survive the brutality of the world completely unscathed. Keep your loupe focused. Keep examining the shadows of your old copper.